What's happening, guys? Kenny here again, and today I've got another hype versus reality review for you, and it's gonna be regarding this little guy. That's right, guys, this is the Benchmade Nakamura 484-1601. This is the Knifecenter exclusive with stabilized wood handles, M390 steel from Bohler, and the orange pivot collars. This also comes in a version that's G10 scales with a silver pivot collar, then a carbon fiber scales with with S90V steel. The G10 version has M390 as well. So yeah, again, I'm going to be doing the hype versus reality review today, and as you guys know, I'm going to go right into the specs here. I'll put those on the page so that I don't waste your guys' time spewing off a bunch of specs. Yeah, as you guys can see by the specs, this is a fairly small knife, and I'm going to go ahead and do some size comparisons here. Just a great size comparison, and we will be seeing a lot of this in this video, is the mini griptilian. I do want to apologize, guys. I know you guys might hear some gardeners in the background. I hope that you don't, but if you do, I want to apologize for that. It is Monday, and those guys are battling me as usual. Yeah, so the mini griptilian, go ahead and bring in a, well, why would I do that? Let's keep him on the side. Let's keep the Benchmades going here. We got the 940. As you can see, that is a much larger knife than the Nakamura. And then also, just bring in the freak since he's there. The super freak. As you can see, that's a much larger knife. Let's actually line up the pivot so you can see that. Much larger knife than the Nakamura. Yeah, then we'll go ahead and bring in some Spydercos. I'll go ahead and leave that guy up there. So you see the chaparral is a very similar, I mean, it's a smaller knife, but it is a 5th pocket knife, kind of like the Nakamura is. And so is the native. Very similar sized knife. We'll bring in the Para 3 just for good measure. I know a lot of you guys have that knife. And then we'll get rid of this guy and bring in the PM2. So you can see your size comparisons there. But really, the most important size comparison I think there is on this knife is going to be this guy. If you, jeez, I am having some trouble here, guys. If you guys have the mini grip, it's gonna be a great way to know whether you like this knife or not. So as far as that goes, I'm gonna go right into the hype versus reality. And when I do the review in this fashion, I'm just gonna go ahead and go right into the hype. And what the hype was on this knife for me is, from when I first started getting into Benchmades and all that stuff, I was kind of drawn to this knife just by the look. It does have a really cool design. The look was definitely something that drew me in right off the bat. It's different looking. It's also, the blade had a really cool look to it. Very different design with the swedge and the modified drop point shape. It did have just something that really drew me in as far as the shape goes. And then also it was M390. When I first started looking at them, I didn't have any M390, so I was intrigued by that steel. Even though I did get the 20CV, I just wanted to see how the analog reacted, like how that would act compared to the 20CV. So I was intrigued by that. Also, the wooden scales on this model always kind of drew me in. This was my first wooden, like, stabilized wood scale. I had wood scales before, and in fixed blades, but not in a folder. Nothing like this. So yeah, that was something that drew me in. And also it was a really good example of the access lock from what I saw. Everyone that had these, it seemed like the access lock really worked well in it. So that was something I wanted to see. And then also, it was just a good size for EDC. You know, it's right in that size range of what I used to be like. This was exactly what I was looking for as far as under 3-inch blade. Just a lot of the things that I looked for in a knife at the beginning, or 3 inches and under. But yeah, it really fit a lot of my EDC needs, and it was just something that really intrigued me from the beginning. The one thing I'll say is there's another side of the hype. It was a neg hype. Like, I call it the neg hype, because it was the negative hype that kind of surrounded this knife. From the beginning, there was a lot of things that a lot of reviewers did not like about this knife. There's a lot of things that a lot of people did not like about this knife. So I wanted to talk about that as well. One thing was the thumb stud, the placement of the thumb stud and the way it kind of hooks was a negative hype thing about this, like it would deploy in your pocket. Another thing is the finger grooves, how they lock you in, and it kind of forces your hand into one spot. And then also the fact that it's just smaller than people thought, I think. It's just smaller than I think the initial impression was. So those are the things that are kind of like all the hype, the positive hype and the negative hype that kind of comes along with this knife. So I'm just going to refer to both of them just so you guys can, there's two sides of all that. There's definitely two sides to it. This is like a 7-inch knife, so it is small, guys. 7 inches, I think, is the total overall length. Yeah, so in saying that, the reality when I got the knife, when I got it out of box, you guys saw the unboxing of this. It definitely was, it was smaller than I had initially thought it was going to be. But after knowing that it was going to be like the mini grip, I kind of had a good idea. It was beautiful, guys, out of box. I definitely was pretty impressed with just the whole thing, as far as like the blade finish, the fit and finish of the thing, the scales were beautiful. The pivot collar and just the accents, were beautiful. It definitely has an awesome look to it. And when I got it out of box, I was like, yeah, that's what I expected. And the look really impressed me, and just I like everything about it. I do like the split arrow clip on this knife. I think it looks great on this knife, and it carries good enough for me. But I do like the Parkerized split arrow. If I'm gonna go black clip, I definitely want the Parkerized, not the painted. So I liked that. There were a few fit and finish things that I noticed, like it's not the most amazing transition from the liner to the wood, but it's pretty uniform. It's just not the most tight, like, amazing fit you would see and be, like, blown away by the fit and finish. Or the fit, I should say. But the transitions are pretty good, like, to touch. I don't really, like, it's not horrible. But you do see the gaps there. So, it wasn't, like, blow me out of the water type of fit, but definitely good enough. I didn't feel like I got gypped or anything. So that was the first impression of the scales and the design. I really did like everything, the way they designed it and the color accents and everything. Just really beautiful. The action was a little stiff out of box. As you guys saw, if you saw the unboxing, it was a little stiff, which I have fixed. Yeah, but it was stiff, and the detent was a little soft. You saw, like, the first time I went to deploy it for how stiff it was. It's just not a stiff. As far as detent on these access locks, what it really is it's really dynamic how the access lock squeezes up against, and once you push it past that corner, that's how the detent works. It's not a real detent hole with a detent ball, obviously. So sometimes the detent on these access locks can feel really soft, and you can usually swing them out with just gravity. So that's one thing about axis locks you have to understand. But in saying that, once I got used to the way this thing deploys, I never have an issue, and I never have a problem deploying it. It always comes flying out. So yeah, that was just a few things on the action I noticed right off, and that the centering was a little off as far as fit and finish. It is a little off. It's not something that bothers me really, and even when I took this thing apart, I didn't fully take it apart so that I could fix that. I just took the blade out and, you know, like clean the pivot up and put it back in, because that doesn't really bother me that much. It's not rubbing. It's not even close to rubbing. It's just a little off. So those are things I just noticed right out of box. One thing I noticed later is that these are all T6 screws, which is kind of nice as far as taking it apart and putting it back together, but at the same time, I'd rather they all be T8 screws. You know what I mean? Just have a beefier Torx bit. But yeah, and having a T6 pivot, it is a small pivot. I'll say that, guys. I mean, this isn't I wouldn't consider this a hard use knife. You know what I mean? I really wouldn't, but it is something to consider. Like, I wouldn't be doing really gnarly things prying on this pivot or anything. I mean, not that you would anyways with this knife, but just something to consider. Yeah, but the ergos, guys, for me personally, it does work for me. Just so you guys understand my hand size, I'm a medium to large size glove. I have medium size hands as far as the length of my fingers and the length of my palm. This is all medium, but the width of my fingers and the thickness of my hand usually fit better in a large. So that's where, that's how my hand size is. And for me, it's like essentially a perfect fit. All my fingers fall right into those grooves, and it kind of disappears. I don't notice these grooves. But one thing I'll say is this is the type of knife where it's definitely one of those ones that it's better if you can put it in hand first. And the reason I have the mini grip here is because if the mini grip fits your hand, like if your hand just barely fits on the mini grip and it just disappears at the end like that, that's pretty much a perfect, analog of what this is going to do. And the fact that the grooves are there just kind of locks you in even more so than the mini grip. Even though this is a good grip and I don't feel like it's going to slip out of my hand, that is even more so just kind of like, whoa, that knife just disappears in my hand. And it's so comfortable, guys. For me, guys. And that's where this knife, more so than a lot of other knives, is going to be a very personal, subjective thing as far as ergos go. So this is one of those knives that I would say you do want to have it in hand. I know, reverse grip, guys. Not a very practical grip, but it does feel amazing as well. And then the draw cut it's not horrible with these points. They're not sharp or anything. That feels good for the draw cut. And then pinch grip everything feels good in hand for me, guys. It really does. And I didn't know whether this was going to work or not, so the fact that it fits so great in hand is a plus. It's a big time plus, and it means I can keep the knife essentially. Otherwise, I would have probably passed it along. The one thing I will say for the ergos is this ramp is a bit like, it's not in no man's land, but it's a little in between. Like, it could go forward. I'd feel like you would have a little bit more comfortable, like right here for my hands, but that would be in the cutting path. And I can put my hand on this side of it, like I put my thumb on this side of the ramp and it works really good. And then if I'm back here, I can push like into the cardboard. So that works really good, or whatever I'm cutting, wood or whatever I am cutting. Yeah, it worked really good. And I did like that about the ergos, but it's definitely something, again, a personal preference, subjective thing. Some guys feel like this is going to be cramped, I'm sure, with being back here, especially if your hands are any bigger than mine. But yeah, so the ergos, for me, again, you know, mini grip size, they work really good. The ergos on this knife, for me. And this thing really does disappear. And I did do extensive cutting with it, and it really disappears. Especially with this clip, I don't even feel it back here. It just disappears. The split arrow clip ergonomically is excellent on this knife. So really, really well done. I love the ergos on this. Nakamura design, really, really nice. So love that about it as far as ergos go. Now, as far as the action too, as you can see, it has smoothed up very nicely. It is pretty, like, as soon as I release the access bar, for the most part, it just falls free. Although sometimes it gets stuck at the top and I just have to give it a little swing. But in saying that, it's pretty amazing as far as action goes. And I could probably even loosen it more. When I put it back together, I left it a little tight so that it could wear in a little bit more. And I don't want any play. Right now it's really just solid lockup. A little bit of play this way, but that happens with access locks, and as you cut it almost locks in even more. But yeah, really well done as far as action goes, and solid lockup. And the blade does have really beefy, you see that beefy tip on there. Nice. I forget what the blade stock thickness is. We'll go over that in a little bit. But yeah, really nice as far as the action goes. The thumb stud, guys, I am going to spend some time on the thumb stud because this is one thing that this knife gets a lot of, it gets just a lot of slack for this, because the thumb studs, it's an interesting choice, guys. And I will say that if this was my knife, if I was designing this knife, I would have gone a different direction, to be honest. But again, this is not my knife. I did not design it, and I'm sure he had something in mind when he put... I know why he did the thumb stud where it is. And the reason is, with the ramp, he wanted it to look right. He didn't want to have a thumb stud right here and then have the Benchmade symbol over here. Aesthetically, the thumb stud is where it should be. Aesthetically, when you're looking at it open like this, or when you have your hand on the knife, it looks right. Almost looks like the eyeball of a bird or something, right? Yeah, Frankie and Bird on the Birdshot channel, that's like, it does look like a bird, guys, for sure. But aesthetically, it works great. Closed, I don't necessarily think that, but open, the aesthetics where the clip, where the thumb stud is pretty good. It is in the cutting path though, which is not necessarily a good thing. But it's not like so horrible that it bothers me that much, but it is something to be thinking of. But also, the thing that I really notice that bugs me is in deployment. If you look at where this finger groove is, the thumb stud should be right here. It should be like right here. So that when I go to deploy this knife, it's almost like I just follow that groove right into my thumb stud. This, you kind of miss it. When I got this knife the first time, you look at the 940, you see how the 940, it's tucked right up in there? You pretty much follow the edge of this, and it goes right into the thumb stud. This one, you'd almost have to follow the first finger groove, and it goes right into it. But if you follow that finger groove, you kind of miss the thumb stud. It's not horrible, and you kind of catch the edge of it, so you roll it out nicely. But what I notice is if I'm deploying this thing, I almost just put my finger right on the thumb stud and fling it out. Finger flick it, works really good. You just get your middle finger behind that thumb stud, and it does have a little bit of a hooking effect on these thumb studs. You see how it's shallower here than it is on the tip, so it does have a bit of a hooking effect where you can really get your fingernail underneath it. Also on your thumb, you really get a good grip. So I never find myself slipping off of these thumb studs. They're really well made in that way. Excuse me, design-wise. That's really nice because it does grip the thumb really well. But if it was right next to the scale, then it would work amazingly. But where it is right now, what ends up happening is as you're drawing this thing out of your pocket, with the thumb stud being so far out here, and with that little hooking effect, it does grab your pocket, guys. And this has almost like an Emerson style opening where if you're pulling it out like this, it will open coming out of your pocket. It'll grab the edge of the pocket and open. I had it happen a few times. In saying that, after it did happen, because I kind of knew it was going to happen, I was ready for it. But after it did happen, I kind of had to start thinking about it a little bit and like, how would I pull it out of my pocket so that doesn't happen? I know that the Apostle P he did this video a really long time ago. He said he would like twist his knife like this so that it didn't grip. For me, what I do is when I grab my knife out of my pocket, I usually just put my finger here so that if it does grab, my knife's not going to open. My finger's in front of the blade. That's how I do it, but I can see his way working too. I do it like this, and it seems to come out really easily, and I never have to worry about that. It does grip sometimes, but I just turn it and pull it out. It doesn't bother me, guys. It may be a make or break moment for some guys, but it's still a knife that's probably not going to leave my collection ever. I do love it. But yeah, that was something I noticed right away. It was obviously with it kind of being one of the negative hype issues was that thumb stud. But yeah, guys, I do believe that thumb stud should be right here. Like right where the edge of the Benchmade, butterfly wing is. Like right there would have been perfect. And it would have been weird aesthetically, but it would have functionally been better. Honestly, guys, I would have said they could have eliminated the thumb ramp. Although I understand some guys like the locked-in feeling of the thumb ramp, and it would have changed the aesthetics of the whole knife, I honestly think they could have at least done a lower thumb ramp or something a little bit more. I think it would have just been universally more accepted. It would have been universally more accepted if they had brought that a little bit flatter as far as the thumb ramp goes. You could have just put your thumb there, and it wouldn't have forced your hand into a certain grip. But that was the idea with this knife, was to force your hand into a certain grip. But it just makes it a little bit more of a subjective thing, Like it's not a knife that's going to work for everyone. But yeah, so the thumb stud, that's the negative thing, is the thumb stud. The M390 on this guy has been performing really well. I've been impressed by it. I do find that in sharpening, in use, this M390 is far superior for me compared to this 20CV here. I don't think that has anything to do with the fact that this is 20CV and this is M390. I think it has something to do with the heat treat done on this knife and this knife. I think that this one was not done well, but it could just be burnt edge that I'm still removing. This knife has been sharpened 3 times, going on 4 probably soon, and I have not been impressed by this 20CV. And this is going to Kurt this week, guys, so eager to see what happens with that. And then eventually this one will go to Kurt too, and we'll see how this M390 is. But I have been impressed, and it sharpened up really nicely. Took a super keen edge. I might put some of the hair whittling on the page right now. I did get this thing really, really wicked sharp. And even right now, after a lot of use, let's see if you can see this. Yeah, see it digging in. It is extremely sharp still. I did just drop it lightly this morning just to see, and man, it came up so sharp again. I mean, it was sharp still when I stropped it, but let's see if I can find a spot that's still got hair on it. Yeah, you can see it popping hairs, guys. It is extremely sharp. Try not to cut myself here. But yeah, I mean, blowing hairs off, guys. So, yeah, really impressed with this M390 so far, and I'm really eager to see how it does on the HRC test. And I'd actually be eager to see how it does in Steve's test, and actually how Steve likes this knife as well. He might like it. I have a feeling he might. But yeah, so the M390 is performing well, and I'll go ahead and put some video on right now of me cutting with the knife. It did cut really well, guys. For something that's kind of thick, as far as like for the size of it, it does have pretty thick blade stock, and it does have just a pretty thick behind the edge. Like it's not that great behind the edge, and I'll show you guys that in a second. But it definitely cut well for what it is. I did lay back that edge like Steve talks about. Once I laid the edge back to more like a 17-degree angle per side, it definitely sliced much better than the factory edge, which was a little more obtuse, maybe like 18 or 19. I think that this is like between 17 and 18. I think it might be 35 degree, inclusive. So I think for what it is, it was cutting really well, even on the factory edge. After I laid it back, it cut even better. It was a pretty good slicer, and I have been extremely impressed with this knife in general. Just really all around liked, I just liked everything about it, essentially. The ergos, the way it sliced, everything really nice, the action, and I have definitely not been let down by this knife in general. Another really cool thing about the design here is the way that you see how this wraps around the stop pin, so you get a nice solid lockup. I know a lot of like Laconico designs. Ray Laconico does this with most of his designs. It's just a great way for the knife. You get a better, you get a better lockup because you have more surface area on the stop pin. It also is going to wear better over time. There's no flattening or anything like that. So it's just really, really nice design on that. And then just a lot of little things like the accents of the knife, really nice. They do have a lot of, it's like 3 standoffs, which seems a little excessive for this size knife, but it's solid. For this little guy, you are not gonna break it. It does have steel liners that are not milled, so it's a little heavy for this size knife. I'm gonna go ahead and bring in the scale. I'll zero it out. So yeah, 3.22 for pretty much a 3-inch blade. That's not horrible. That's pretty good. But let's see what the mini grip is. Yeah, 2.89 for about the same size knife. So that's where you're giving up a little bit there. It definitely it is a little longer on the blade length though. Yeah, a little bit longer, just slightly, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch, maybe an 1/8 inch at the most. So yeah, it's a pretty good weight, not bad, especially for how beefy. I feel like this thing feels a little more beefy than the mini grip, although it's not much more. I do feel like this is just a little bit beefier, and I think even stock thickness. Like if you look at how much thicker that stock thickness is. That's significant. And the tip is a little, it's about the same beefiness in the tip, but this has a lot more stock thickness, and it's just a little beefier. I feel like if you were going to be beaten up on your knife, the Nakamura might be a better option. Let's get the scale out of here. We'll bring in the calipers. Go ahead and zero those out in inches. Now let's see what the stock thickness. I know I already put that on there, but yeah, 0.11. So pretty solid stock thickness. What is this one's? I think 0.1 or 0.01. I mean, yeah, 0.0898. So that's thinner. Definitely a lot thinner stock thickness on that. But if you look at the behind the edge thickness, I mean, these are both at about the same angle, and this one's actually a little bit narrower on the secondary bevel, so I think this one might actually be thinner behind the edge. Let's find out. So 24. 26. Yeah, about 26 thousandths. It's like right on the back of the 26, 27 thousandths. So, again, Benchmade, not amazing. Blade geometry, 26. It's about 26 thousandths behind the edge, which isn't amazing. It's about average on Benchmades, I feel like. Get up by the tip, and you're looking at about 30 thousandths, I think. Yeah, 30 thousandths. So, again, Benchmades are not known for their behind the edge thickness. Definitely not. I think this guy was right around the same, to be honest. Maybe I did lay this one back a little bit more as far as second. Oh, no, it is. Yeah, 29 thousandths there, guys. Yeah, this guy is thick. This guy is thick behind the edge. So, yeah, not impressed. Not like necessarily impressed by the blade geometry, but it's good. It slices well for what it is, and you know you don't have to worry about it. And that's the thing about Benchmades, guys, just in general. When I compare it to something like a Spyderco, I think of Spydercos as more of like a slicey blade. I think of like if I need to get some slicing done and I just know I'm just going to be cutting a bunch of cardboard and just really just need blade geometry, Spyderco is more what I'm going for. If I do not know what I'm doing and it's just like I could be stabbing into freaking sand, I could be doing some gnarly stuff with my knife, I'd probably go Benchmade before I'd go Spyderco for the most part, just because they seem to have thicker tips, they have thicker geometry. You're less worried about damaging your edge with most of the Benchmades, as long as you're not laying it back like 15 degrees per side or something. Then you're just pretty much getting the same edge stability as the Spyderco. But as far as tip goes, if you're ever going to be prying, which you shouldn't be anyways, but if you are going to pry, maybe some light prying, this is a much better knife for that. Benchmades in general are better than Spydercos if you're going to be doing that kind of thing. And if you're a guy that is a little bit more, like, let's say you're just not as aware with your knives, you just do, like, if you're just not as keen on thinking about things like, oh, I can't do that with that, I can't do that with this knife, the Benchmade's going to have a little more versatility in that way. Anyways, I know I've rambled on enough about this. I do think that this is a knife that you do want to get in hand if you can. If not, just know that you might have to sell it. It might not fit your hand amazingly. But if you've already been watching my videos and you kind of feel like your hands are similar to mine and everything I say fits my hand, your hand fits, then this is a knife that will be pretty amazing in hand for you if you find that my hand size is similar to yours. But otherwise, it's something that you definitely want to have in hand before you purchase, because it could be something that just does not fit. That's the one thing about this knife, is it's very unique in that way. Otherwise, I'd say this is a no-brainer for a lot of people. This is a beautiful design. It's got a great steel on it. And even the S90V version. I didn't really talk about the other versions, guys, because I've never really handled them. As far as, like, I think the CF version's a little lighter. It also has S90V steel, which, depending on how you feel about that, S90 versus M390, very similar in the sense of, like, S90 is more of a working edge type of steel, whereas this is, like, more of a keen edge type of steel, to kind of dumb it down in a sense. But yeah, I think either way you can't go wrong. I think the carbon fiber version with the blue accents is really rad looking too, but I actually was drawn more to this one. Maybe the CF version too, but the CF version's just, you're talking an extra $40, $50 for the CF version, and I did not myself find it to be worth the extra money personally. And I got an insane deal on these at the end of last year. These were going for like $173 or something, which is what the stock version comes at. And the stock version is G10 with M390. And at the time, I did want M390 over S90, so I thought this version would be perfect. And I was not mistaken. I do love the wood scales, especially being a carpenter. I love the orange accents. I do love this knife, guys. And I would suggest it. I don't think that the hype, I think the negative hype was true. I think that it's something you need to consider. But I don't think it's like something to like fully deter you from the knife. This thumb stud thing was not a make it or break it thing for me. I found to get used to it really quick where the placement is, even though if I was designing this knife, I would have done it differently. If you think about it the way he's thinking about it, where would you have put the Benchmade? You know, where would you have put the butterfly if you had put the thumb stud here? It would have looked weird with the butterfly over here or something. So I see why he did what he did, but I don't think it was amazing, the choice he made. I didn't talk about the jimping, guys. The jimping is excellent. For those of you guys that don't like jimping, this is a great jimping. It's flat at the top, but when you put your thumb in and dig, it grips. So it's not something that's going to rub your finger the wrong way, but as soon as you need the grip, it grips. Amazingly done, guys. Sorry, I know that's at the very end where it should have been in like the reality part, but yeah, overall, I think this is a great knife, guys. And Benchmade, I know why this knife didn't do as well as it probably should have, but it seems to be a staple in their designs, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. But it is an excellent knife, and I suggest it. But like I said, you just got to make sure it's something that might, you know, will fit your hand. And if you like this size knife, that is, because you know, it's definitely in that size range where a lot of guys would much rather go for something like that. It is, I will say that something like this is a little bit more like, yeah, my hand fits this a little better. But this one just disappears. So I wouldn't say like this is a better fit for me than this. I'd say that they both really fit really good in hand. This just has a little more real estate. But yeah, great knife, guys, and I would suggest it. So I hope you enjoy this, guys. I hope I didn't ramble too much, and I think this is going to be kind of a long one, but it's because of a lot of the hype things that come along with this. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again to all you guys for all your subs and likes and everything. I know I say that every time, but I really appreciate you guys. Have a great day.